Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I got a bunch of stuff to get to. A weird Fran Drescher sighting over the actors' strike thing or whatever it is. To start off with, I got some Kennedy stuff to get into. And Jojo Magoo, all these things. The presidential stuff. But I want to hopefully wrap this Sound of Freedom up thing here. I think I have one more comment to get to. In fact, I know I have one more comment to get to, and then I have a little of a narrative to do, and then get into the rest of the stuff. Here it says how conspiracy theorists embraced Sound of Freedom and the wild Ashton Kutcher connection. Here's the article from Yahoo News. It says Sound of Freedom: What You Need to Know About the Hit Faith-Based Thriller Fueling Conspiracy Theories. And, this is how it's being covered. It says here, the faith-based child trafficking thriller Sound of Freedom has become one of the biggest, most unexpected box office hits of the year, thus ranking in $53 million and counting, and even outdueling Walt Disney's Indiana Jones Dial of the Destiny. That's kind of a good thing there. There have been outlandish QAnon-eccentric conspiracy theories spread and refuted, a screening planned by former President Donald Trump, and a link made between the film and a years-old congressional testimony by Ashton Kutcher. Here's everything you need to know about the sleeper hit. And so this is how they are characterizing the movie, which is very typical. It's what I've been talking about here. And then let's move to the comment. All right, so let me pull up this comment here. It came in yesterday. This morning I put up a video on my other channel, which is today's Monday. This video probably won't be up till Tuesday. It's just the way things have worked out. So I didn't have time to get that video done with everything. I had a little car accident, whatever. Everybody's fine. I'll talk about that in the Journey series. But this comment came in right after I talked about this, the Sound of Freedom in the other video on my other channel. And this is, I know about the Island Boys making out, Mika Blass, Joe's handlers, and Kamala something. And I, talked about Sound of Freedom in this as well. And the person said, just stop, to me. Dude, many people have not even been aware that this is going on. Again, this person doesn't really, make it clear what they're talking about right off the bat. And you and I both know that it's way worse than the pedo stuff. And so then I know the person's talking about this film. The thing that you guys fail to see, and it's, that's why I showed you the Yahoo News thing, is that the only people that are going to watch this movie are qbie right-wing truthers. There's many of us in the truth community that can't watch it. Like, we couldn't even watch the trailer. We know it's just it's bad content, right? It's like watching a bad truther. There's plenty of truthers out there that I couldn't watch, right? I don't watch other truthers for reasons I've talked about in other videos, but there are good truthers out there, and there are bad ones. And the bad ones, I can't watch their content because it's crappy content. Doesn't matter whether they agree with me a little bit more than other people. Doesn't matter if they even agree with me a lot. It's just that a lot of times they don't really understand what they're talking about, or they have an agenda, or they're whatever it is, right? It's just not good. It doesn't have a good vibration to it. It doesn't have a good, narratives. But the Sound of Freedom only appeals to you. It's not going to wake anybody up. You're not going to reach a new audience. And that's what you guys fail to understand. It's preaching to the choir, right? It's echo chamber stuff, right? And so once you understand that, then it's just you guys who all, and it's mostly QBs and people along the QB lines who are still upset about this, right? You guys came in And I, had a comment from someone years ago because I wrote about how, there's a difference between, or I was talking about in a video how there was a difference between the people who came in with a big event in 2001. That was a big awakening event. And then there were several things that happened after that. Big events that were, that infused people, the most recent one being COVID, right? Where people woke up, because of what was going on with that. And so there was a new group of people, a demographic that came in with each of these big events. And one of them was the pizza thing. And a lot of those people are right-wing conservatives, right? And the knock against you right-wing conservative truthers is that you never cared about kids being abused in the Vietnam War or the multiple wars that happened, the legal wars by George W. Bush and, after the big event, and the stuff that happened in Iraq. You didn't care about brown kids getting droned in, Afghanistan or wherever it might be. You didn't care about any of those things. You were, pro-war when you were Reagan people, when you were Bush, W. Bush or Bush, whatever it was. And, you didn't wake up when all those things were happening. And you were, your party was the party of war and the party of, pro-America stuff. And you never took responsibility for the bad side of America and the human rights things. And now all of a sudden you care about foreign kids. And, the policies that you have pushed, the great Make America Great Again policies and the Trump policies, the economic policies, create the conditions where abuse and human trafficking happen and flourish in, and certainly in wars and things like that. But you didn't care about any of that stuff. But now all of a sudden you care about kids. Like, it's a thing, like the whole pizza thing, and it's a flip-flop because the left used to care about, Amnesty International, and they used to care about human rights stuff. And now they don't. It's bizarre, right? It's completely flipped. But the left and the right hate each other so much that, there's no way that anything that's considered right-wing stuff, and I'll get into this with Kennedy. You see NPR does a hit piece on Kennedy. And that's why conspiracy theories, even though the left used to be the party of alternative health, the left used to be the big anti-pharma party, right? Or at least liberal people. Maybe not the party itself, but the liberal people. But now that's all flipped. Kennedy said it himself that anything Trump liked, the Democrats would immediately campaign against. And people would take the opposite position on everything Trump said. And that's just how it's gone, right? Same thing now with Biden. There's no chance of a crossover between these various demographics. And the right-wing people who aren't truthers don't like you and don't like what's happened to their party. And so the only people who are going to watch this Sound of Freedom are people like you. It's the Trumpers, right? These are the people who, your so-called election denier, Trumping, qbie type of people, right? It's the only people that can stomach the movie, just based on its merits and its content, and it's the way it's manipulating you. And you've been told it's manipulating you, and there's so many truthers out there. And I'm going to get back to this comment in a moment. There's so many truthers out there that are saying that the movie sucks, and they, this whole thing with Carlos Slim. I'm getting recommended videos. I'm watching little bits of them on YouTube when I get the chance. And it's both people who are praising this movie and then truthers who are saying this movie's bogus. Somebody sent me a thing, a guy's, I think it's some kind of off-the-grid channel. I think it was a channel people told me about to recommend for the ads, which is failing miserably. Google's just stealing my money. Like, it's just, I have to, cancel the thing. They won't talk to me, too. That guy said he was going to get back to me, and he never did. All these things. And I haven't been able to pay attention to it, but I will, and I'll do an update, and then I'll close out the ad campaign as a complete failure. The only good thing about it is I know more now, and I can say more now than I did before. But anyways, one of my viewers on Instagram sent me a link to a video from this off-the-grid person. And I just watched a little bit of it at the beginning. But he was saying that the movie's been 5 years in the making, right? And so they've been making this movie for 5 years. So it started with the whole qbie movement, like when the qbie movement was, in its infancy, right? It was taking off. But what I'm saying here, the most important thing to understand is that once the thing breaks, the guy talked about Carlos Slim a little bit, and this is a whole big thing. But I don't need the Carlos Slim stuff, and I don't need any of that. I just have to watch the trailer, and I know that it sucks. I know it's targeting you, and I know it's a whole problem that's been around the truth community for a while. It's fake information coming out, polarizing information, preaching to the choir, information and ways of presenting information that puts makes it divisive. It puts conspiracy theorists, something where they can work that narrative on the left leaning media, and it's something that's not going to accomplish anything. It's just going to hurt your cause. The qbies hurt the cause of anti-child trafficking. They went overboard. They made stuff up. They acted, they played the fool. They fed right into the narrative. And now the media, somebody sent me a clip of Mika Brzezinski talking about how the right wing's always making up stuff about human trafficking. So then once you cast doubt on something in people's minds, when you take an issue and you allow people to say, oh, that's just crazy conspiracy theorists because of the way you present the information and the way that you don't vet it, and you put in a lot of false information and misinformation out there, right? And it's the whole thing that they're doing on NPR. I'll show you that. Once you do that, which is what's happened in the truth community, it's people who are working for the intelligence community who are posting things, and it circulates around, or it's people just making things up and sharing stuff that hasn't been fact-checked and vetted. When that all happens, it destroys all of the credibility that's been built up by, serious people who are, who take the truth seriously. And it's destroyed the community. Like, there's no community. There never really was. But, like, this whole movement of being able to post alternative narratives on the internet, there's no scrutiny. There's no oversight. There's no editors. There's nobody it's just individual people just saying whatever they want. And that doesn't work because people are stupid, crazy, and sometimes deceptive. And then there's, bad players in there who are working for the, this group or that group, media outlets or intelligence community, whatever it is, shills or whatever you want to call it, people who are purposely posting bad information out there. And you guys sucking it up and reposting it, and, just because you are upset and emotionally butthurt about things. And so the right wing of the truth community and the qbies have destroyed any credibility that's there. And so it's so easy for them to say all human trafficking things are just crazy conspiracy theories, and from crazy conspiracy theorists. That's how they're doing this, and so they use it as a divisive issue. In this movie, you can just see they're doing that. And when truthers come out and say, yeah, this is, a bad movie with negative consequences, and you're like, no, it's well, just accept it. Like, just accept that you got played, right? That you got worked, and it's not going to come with any benefits. It's not going to help the situation. So it says here, just stop, dude. Many people have not even been aware that this is going on, and they still aren't. And you and I both know that it's way worse than the pedo stuff. Geez, you are so black-pilled that you can't appreciate this tiny breakthrough. It's not a breakthrough. I've explained this over and over again. And I'm not black-pilled. I've accepted reality. I've accepted the reality that there is a system that lured our ancestors off the farm, off the tribe. I've said this years and years ago. This is the whole premise of Pockets of the Future. That you lured our ancestors off the tribe with a big lie that there would be a system. This is the really big lie. That there would be a system, an economic system, that they would no longer need their homesteading skills. They would no longer need their community, their tribal community. They could work 8 hours a day at a specialized job and make enough money to live comfortably. And that lifestyle and the things they got used to were going to be there forever, were sustainable, and they could, just throw away all these skills and all this hard work and all the trials and tribulations of life, and they could throw away their relationship with God and their relationship with their family and all these things, and just live these independent lives of pleasure in this economic system. But it was a lie because it wasn't sustainable, because it was based in a debt-based economic usury system that was already known to only be short-lived. And then just going away from God and doing these things, living unnaturally, would cause spiritual, repercussions, like echoes of consequences that would come back and eventually destroy the system. And then you would be helpless because you're dependent on a system and you've given up your ancestral skills generations ago, and you'd be screwed. And that's where we are right now. We're screwed because we don't have the skills and we're not used to it. We're used to this system. We grew up in this system. And these kids who are going to inherit this, as young adults, this generation of internet kids who are in their 20s and on down, even in their 30s, they know material life even less. They've grown up mostly in the cyber world. They don't even have they have a in the real world is a saying that didn't exist until their generation, IRL, and so they're all screwed, right? That's where we are. The system's collapsing, and we don't know anything else. We don't have any backup plan, and we're just like zoo animals who have lost anything that resembles being a human being. So that's not black-pilled, that's just reality. And, I wish it weren't true. I'm not saying I'm psyched about it, right? It's just, that's where it is. And yeah, if it's tough for you to hear that, he's just black-pilled. Okay. That makes it easy for you. That makes, that lets you off the hook. But it's not black-pilled, it's reality. That's our situation. And yes, everything around us is a result of abuse, from the clothes that we wear to the food that we eat. But baby steps. There's no baby steps because you guys will never accept that. All these people that love this movie, they won't accept what I said there. They won't look into their lives and see what they're doing to contribute to the abuse. They just want to say, these bad deep state guys, and we get rid of them, everything go back to normal. They're the Trumpers. They're the, these are shallow people, right? They can't look at themselves and see that they're part of the problem. We have been in a cave, the myth of the cave. Pouring acid on the shadows does nothing. I feel like you can do better at being true to your point of view, yet maintaining some empathy. There's no empathy or whatever here. It's not like I'm not being unempathetic. People, the majority of people just don't care. They don't care. They don't care about child trafficking. And some of them, most of them are so overwhelmed and asked out by their lives, they can't even think about something like this. They're just trying to get through their days. They're just trying to get through their miserable lives, jobs they hate, families and marriages that suck, and, or divorced or whatever. And they're just, just getting through the day is all they can do. They have nothing left for anything else, like, spiritual life or, being philosophical or learning about the truth of their situation. They shut down as soon as you talk about it. They have nothing. They're bankrupt. They've lost all their prana. They're like vampirish. They're just energy suckers who are like limping through life, ghoulish in their orientation to the world. And that's where they are, right? I feel like you can do better than just point out your point of view, maintaining some empathy. Some people didn't believe in Epstein Island, but now they're thinking. And what is their thinking going to do? There's no action here. There's no alternative movement. There's nothing, let's say 80% of Americans said that Jeffrey Epstein didn't die of suicide. What would that do? Okay, so what? They're just ignoring you. They're ignoring the majority of people already. They've just divided people so that people won't work together, but there'll be protests, and protests are nothing because the people are calling the shots. They're not being affected by the protests. And that's all there is, protests and, people having tantrums. There's no, anything. Like you have Kennedy, who verbalizes the truth movement, and if he was elected, I'd like to see what he could do or not do, but he can't save the system. Whatever, he might change some things or whatever, but even if he had there was a clean sweep of him, and then there was a lot of truthers that aren't qbie truthers, that aren't the Trump truthers, and not like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a complete joke. She's not a truther, she just sucks. And I'll show you her talking about Kennedy, and she's just such a dope. So it's like there's no real, even in politics, it's not real truther stuff, right? But let's say that happened. There'd be some changes, whatever. We could see what happens and how it plays out. Like, I'm always willing to let things play out. Things, aren't written in stone till they happen. The end of our system. But, it's limited to what you can do, right? There's just a limit in the system. There's no backup plan because this is a debt-based system, and there's $2 quadrillion of debt or more out there that's being traded back and forth like it has value. And you can't get rid of the debt because then you get rid of your wealth. The wealth is debt. And people just don't understand that. Like, it's not that hard to understand. I'm not an economic person. I understand it. That the wealth is debt. Like, everything's debt. Everything's IOUs. And debt is, you can increase debt exponentially, right? Because it's just imaginary. It's just a promise. And so it's a promise to pay. And people are trading this back and forth in the derivatives market, and that's where all the wealth comes from, and being loaned money to do things. If you got rid of all the debt, let's say you paid all the debt off, there would be no wealth, and our system would collapse. And so you can't get rid of the debt. The debt is the demonic aspect of it. It's a lie, right? It allows you to borrow money and build something without doing the work. In real life, without a debt-based system, you have to do the work first. But here you can get the money before, get a loan, and then build a business based in that. But it's just, we're living on a mountain of debt, a mountain of lies. And it's, gotten so big that it can't be, they can't even fudge the numbers anymore. And the system's like game over, like the end of the Monopoly game where Monopoly money becomes valueless. And we've reached that point. And then there's the moral collapse and how weak and pathetic people are and how stupid they are and the idiocracy part. And that's the big part. People are so disconnected from real life, are so messed up, all the social stuff, all the Hollywood morality. And so none of those things can be fixed, right? You can't make people better. People don't choose, and they don't even know what their choices are. The kids growing up today, they don't even remember what it was like when I grew up, and it was messed up when I grew up, right? When we grew up. Those of us who are older. It wasn't great when we grew up either. It was, we were unnatural, and it was heading down this direction. Like TV and the internet haven't done good things, aren't good things, and haven't done good things for people. There's no way to fix it, is what I'm saying. And we don't have a backup plan. And we couldn't move to a more natural system. We couldn't live in tribes. We couldn't live in villages. We couldn't live, most people don't have they're bankrupt energetically. They don't have the capacity for that kind of to live as farmers and to become natural people. Most people just aren't up to it. They don't have it in them, right? And so, it's just a big joke. People didn't believe in the Epstein Island, but now they're thinking the third thing that hits them, will they become a truther? Whose side are you on? The person says that to me. Whose side? There's no sides, right? You're making it sound like there's an opposition here, and there's not. The truth community is people talking, not doing, not building something better. It's them seeing that their system is a deception, that they can see a little bit through the matrix based in your ability, your capacity to understand and how much you can see. You can see that everything that you've been told is, basically a lie, like there's truth in it, that you're living a deception. And that's, all right, fine, that's okay, that's something. But after that, there's nothing, right? There's no movement, there's no solution. You don't have a solution. There's no solutions being given in the truth community. Waking everybody up doesn't work. And I've said this before, the Alex Jones sucks, and someone told me a clip of him. I'm trying to figure out where to put it. It's like it's quite funny, but like he's a controlled opposition who's hurts people. He's hurt this movement since the beginning, and he's divisive. But even if he wasn't, the idea of InfoWars waking people up, we know that doesn't play out because there's plenty of sheeple who've been given information, they just refuse to accept it. And this movie isn't going to wake anybody up. It's not going to wake anybody who's not a right-wing Christian up. And, it's just people who already believe this stuff, who are crying about it when they see it. It's people who are, the qbie level people that are already into this. So they've said this over and over again. You don't see it. Like this, what demographic is this going to watch this movie that's not a qbie? Like it's not a right-wing Republican. And so, it's just whatever. Whose side are you on? Perhaps I'm mistaken. I thought you considered yourself a Melazididagak. I don't even know what it is. Well, I don't because I don't know what the word is. I can't pronounce it. Let's plant seeds for the future versus howling at the present. Well, I'm not howling. That's a mischaracterization of what I do here. I'm just being honest about our situation. There is no solution to this. The people certainly aren't a solution. The people aren't going to fix this. And it would take a new system, and most people couldn't adapt to a new system. Most people can adapt to a new way of living. We're going to take an economic hit at some point, and our lifestyle is going to be, it's just not going to be there. And, that's already in progress. It's happened since COVID, and it's been happening since before then. But it's, become more of a reality. And most people just won't be able to do it, right? Most people won't adjust their lifestyle. But if they do, it'll become more slave-like. These young people folding into these Agenda 31 communities. And, those of us who are incapable of that, and then we're kind of screwed or whatever it is. We all do our best to preserve what we know as lifestyle. But, it's all coming. It's all happening. You can see it. And if you can't see it, well, go somewhere else and let someone else tell you that everything's going to be okay because, that's not what I do here. I don't lie to you because why should I? That's like, this is not the point of my channel, right? What I'm saying here is simple. And people who can understand it or embrace it, it's easy for them to understand. But if you're freaked out by what I'm saying, or not what I'm saying, with the reality of your situation. Like I'm good at understanding the reality of one's situation in my own life and, the collective and, what it means, like the devastating effects of this, right? And I've been seeing it for years, and it's just, the outcome of this system, this experiment is there, and it's not good. We're disconnected from God. We're weaker. Our family has been devastated. We don't have family relationships. We don't act like natural human beings. We've lost all of our natural skills and things that kept human beings alive and survived. We're disconnected from our primary labor of farming and, homesteading and things like this. And it's a huge amount of information and, habitual lifestyle that would, be almost impossible for most people to reclaim. And these other things, it's just there. And so it's overwhelming. Like I get overwhelmed. I don't think about it all the time because I'm like, it's, I don't want to say depressing, but it's, it's being doomed by our circumstances. It's like a meteor is about to hit our world and F everything up. And there's nothing you could do about it. But the meteor is of our own creation. Okay, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so I went and ate breakfast, and there was something I forgot before I get into the other stuff here to say, and this is like the sort of the point of the whole thing. So even this idea of the term black-pilled in the truth community represents the failure or the lack of continuity in this so-called movement that isn't a real movement, right? It's just people... There's awareness being erased, which is something. It's not like nothing, but it can't be an end in itself. It's a stepping stone. And where do you go from your awareness being raised, right? So the idea of being black-pilled, it's either there is a way to save the system or there isn't. If there isn't, And the system's going to fail. All systems fail. Even the best ones, even the ones based in God and nature. There's transitionary things that happen on Earth. There's been civilization after civilization. There's the ones that they've dug up from like 5,000 years ago, whatever. I think the oldest one's like 30,000, whatever it might be. Ancient pyramids, things like this. But there are ones we don't even know about because, even plastic breaks down after 10,000 years. So if there were computers before, if there were laser beams and spaceships or whatever it is, they're part of the Earth now. They break down. There's no artifacts. They're not preserved. But there's been people here for millions of years. And then people in other places, other planets. And in all of the civilizations, they don't go on forever. They just don't. Like we see the ruins, you can find ruins of ancient civilization all over the world. And so eventually this civilization will collapse just because it happens. Like everything has a shelf life. Everything has a beginning and an end. There was a time where there was no physical life, no material life, no living in terms of like not souls. Like there's etheric beings on planets, like there's etheric beings on the moon and things like this, right? There's, etheric life, spiritual life, soul life, but there's, only a handful or, small amount of inhabitable environments and planets in the universe, whatever it is. Might be millions, might be thousands, whatever. And there was a time where there wasn't life on planet Earth. And there'll be a time in the future where life won't be able to exist here anymore. It'll be too hot, it'll be too cold, it'll be whatever. There'll be a time that our sun no longer emits heat. Like the sun has a lifespan. Whatever millions of years it is, it's still going to end at some point. The planet, the sun, all these things. It's transitory. So, that isn't black pill, that's just fact, right? There are, people could say, well, that's, I'm a flat earther or whatever. Yeah, sure, whatever it is, right? But eventually, life on planet Earth will end. And our system will end, more importantly, and quicker. And so if the time for our system ending is now, or soon, then what are the alternatives? And what I've seen from everything that we've exhibited as human beings, you could come up with the most divine system, the best system that reverses all the evils of this system, that's based in the way natural humans live. It's based in a connection to divinity within you, based in your higher nature, your self with a capital S, your soul, a soul-based system, like a soul-driven existence is a book I wrote about, a workbook I wrote years ago. So we have an unnatural system, and we could go back to a natural system, and that would be great. Okay, let's see how that would work. And so then we'd have to sell it to people. And as soon as you told them, yeah, your lifestyle's not going to be the same, you're going to have to give up things, they would all bail, no matter who they were, like, what demographic they're in. If you couldn't promise them exactly what they have now, all their favorite things, they would bail. Like, there'd be a handful of people who are into it. No, there'd be people who are, naturalists, naked and afraid type people who, want to live in a, want to live like that, right? That's their main thing. They like that. They're into it, right? The majority of everyone else, when they realize they have to work harder, they have to learn new skills, they have to change. You're going to have to change dramatically for this new system to work. They would be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so, we can't even get people to agree in the truth community. The truth community is a non-cohesive group of people, and there's no solutions. If there was a solution, you would say, and the solutions are ridiculous, and they're based in your demographic, and they're not realistic. But even if there was a solution, you have to be united in executing that solution. I'll get into this with RFK as we move forward. You have to, be willing to sacrifice and work together and not get it exactly your way and exactly the way you look at it. And people aren't even capable of that in the truth community, never mind any of these other things. And it's the division. And I thought of an example of this. See, we are polluting the world. We're polluting it with electromagnetic pollution, which, people don't talk about it. But we're also polluting it with our corporate waste and our nuclear waste and our, all of it. And the right wing refuses to buy into that. And many of you refuse to buy into that. In fact, when you heard about RFK and you liked some of the things he said, but you would write comments to me or, just believe this, that he is believing in global warming or any of these other, environmental issues. And so you wouldn't vote for him over that, even though he agrees with you more than any other candidate and he's more of a truther than any other candidate. Because you have been so convinced that global warming, the carbon emission stuff is a scam and that we're not really polluting the world. And it's a right wing, it's not corporate friendly or business friendly. And so there is no pollution. But the global warming thing is a scam, but we're polluting the world anyway. And carbon emissions are a part of that. You can see the quality of air has gone down. And so the way that they convinced all of you that it's just crazy left-wing agenda that the world's being polluted and they're trying to take your stuff away, and this is Al Gore stuff or, whoever you hate in the left wing pushing this agenda, and that there is no pollution and we don't have to change the way that we deal with. And it's not just America, it's even worse in other countries. And so there's no, it's just Greta Thunberg and Al Gore and, and they're all just crazy conspiracy theorists, left wing environmental nuts, is the same way that people perceive this movie on the left, right? You understand this? The way the way that you have been warped against, anything to do with the environment. Oh, you're just one of those do-gooder hippies, you've been warped against it. And so then you don't have to deal with the fact that our world's being polluted. Our air quality is worse. The animals are going extinct. There's less bugs. There's less everything. That we're headed in the wrong direction and we're killing our environment. And that's what's happened with this whole human, child trafficking thing. Oh, you're just one of those crazy QBs. You're just one of those crazy QAnon people. Like, that's the way that they'll frame it. And it's easy to dismiss anything that's truth because it's been exposed as a lie. The one thing has been exposed as a lie, but covering up a bigger truth. And like they can cite disinformation, things that have been fact-checked or whatever. And it's so easy to divide people in that way. And this movie is divisive. The Sound of Freedom, it's a fail. It's a swing and a miss. It has negative consequences for your movement. It actually makes it easier for them to traffic humans because they can just pigeonhole it into your belief system, right? And there's, other things in the right wing that won't embrace things because they have worked you in some way. And, and you think, oh, that's just what liberals believe. And they say, oh, this is just what crazy conservatives believe, conspiracy nuts, right? It's so easy to get people away from the truth of our situation in that way and bring people together collectively. If aliens showed up, it would be like, oh, this is a scam or hoax or whatever. Aliens show us, say, all right, you got to do something. Even they start, oh, this is just a Project Blue Beam or whatever it might be, right? And so this is how it goes. There's no changing because people can't agree on reality. There's such a division in reality. We're going through a divorce. Like when you're married to somebody, this happened to me, where, there'd be events that are happening. You can't agree on the actual historical reporting of these events. You have such a warped lens and you see things so completely different and, all these things that you can't even, have a shared reality. We don't have a shared reality right now. And so we're doomed because of that, because there's no way people can come together and work together. Division always destroys things. It destroys families, it destroys companies, it destroys countries, it destroys a world. These kind of divisions. When you can't agree on reality, you can't agree on, oh my God, there's a real problem here. There's an environmental problem, there's a money problem, there's a psychological problem. Think about the differences now in the gender thing and all these things, all these ways of people looking at stuff, the woke versus the awakened, all these groups, the hatred, there's no shared reality. In the conflict, when there's an option, let's say there's an option there's an actual solution here. And, people would have to all come off their high horse and, eat some crow and accept their contribution in the problem, take some personal responsibility and die. And there is a solution. There's a spiritual solution, the Sizemore system that I do, which, even people who do it, it's collapsed recently, the Heartfulness scam that's run by the current master. I watched it collapse right in front of me, and all the people just folded. It's unbelievable, like, to me, that all these people, some of them are, famous past life saints and like great, beings, and they weren't up to the challenge of dealing with this thing. And that's, what's happened over and over again with Jesus and Krishna and Buddha and all these other spiritual people that have come down. They come down and there's a brief movement, and then it gets corrupted and turned into a corrupt religion that disconnects people. It does the opposite. That acts as a middleman, a profiting middleman that has religious power that controls the outcome. And so when a solution is given, humanity fails. It's happened for thousands of years now, and it's happening now. And so people won't even be able to take the solution that's there for them, right? Master Chargy, the third master, the Sagemark system, he had this great analogy. He said, you can go in the middle of a room and run a rope down from the ceiling and hang a bucket of honey or sugar or something from that rope. And ants, simple-minded ants, these primitive, underdeveloped collective, they're not even like individuals, will find a way. They'll crawl up the wall, they'll crawl across the ceiling, they'll crawl down the rope, they'll crawl into the honey, and then they'll crawl back to their ant hang, and they'll all feast, right? But human beings can have a solution put right in front of them, and they won't take it. They can't accept it. They won't do it. And so that's the reality of our situation, right? And, you can prejudice yourself against things on the left, and then you expect the left, when they see your movie, that they're just going to watch it. You know nothing. Like, you've learned nothing. You've learned nothing about, even other truthers. That, you want it on your terms, and you want everyone to see the world the way you see it. And that's not going to happen. And that's what Cry of or Sound of Freedom is. It's seeing the world through the eyes of qbies who are, you're newbies, that's why I call you qbies, on the truth community. You don't really get it. You haven't even done entry-level stuff yet. You haven't confronted your own, issues and your own contribution. You're just right-wing people that got butthurt about the way the world was going, and you got trumped and you got qbied, and you made up this shared reality that was dictated to you by the intelligence community. And they worked you and they played you, and now this is what it's become of it, right? And so black-pilled. All right, let's get into it here. One more thing here. It's not time for baby steps. This guy wrote baby steps. There's no baby steps. Like, we're behind the curve. I'm behind the curve. I'm not where I should be spiritually. I'm not where I should be, in my material preparation for what's going to happen. And I'm way ahead of most people because, I've been doing this longer. Like, we're not in a time of baby steps. We're about to hit the iceberg, right? Or we've hit the iceberg already. We don't know it, right? It's like that period. It's not, we can just sort of ease people into it, right? The cold slap of reality is upon us. All right, let's get into it here. Making this video yesterday on the 17th of July, and now I'm completing it on the 18th, and I got recommended this video, so I was kind of done with the Sound of Freedom, but this was a quote from Tim Ballard. And it starts off here with this guy, Jesse Walters, who is, Tucker Carlson embraced truther narratives. And I don't want to say Tucker Carlson is a truther, but I don't want to say he's a complete shill or fake. Like, he's, to me, in between. Like, I think he believes some of these things. I think he's had some personal movement. I think he, I don't know. It's like some sincerity, not just a shill, not somebody who's an opportunist, not like a Trump or somebody, Steve Bannon, who, they work the truth community to get support for Trump, like not that bad, like not that level of insincerity, but somebody who's, had a little bit of transformation, but still is an insider, somebody who's whatever. But Jesse Waters isn't that. Jesse Waters is just one of those obnoxious people that is so, the narcissism just, flows out of the guy. And Fox News just sucks so bad. So Jesse Waters starts off here. Again, he's taken Tucker Carlson's spot.
On July 4th, the #1 movie in America wasn't Indiana Jones. Disney spent $300 million resurrecting Harrison Ford and releasing the summer blockbuster. But there's another movie dominating the box office. It's called The Sound of Freedom.
So this guy, like, just, he's everything that sucks about Fox News. Okay, I'm in the editing process. This ends up being like a 2-hour video, which wasn't my intention. I just want to say quickly that you can't claim underdog or underground status when you beat Indiana Jones, right? When you beat a major blockbuster on 4th of July weekend, when you crush it, right? You can't claim, and I get into the whole difference of how much it costs and things, but I just want to say that here. These guys are claiming to be like alternative. You were the number one movie on the 4th of July weekend, right? You crushed the competition. And so this guy, Tim Ballard, he is an NSA working for the worst intelligence agency there is. And all these people are against 3-lettered agencies, right? It's so much how the QBs have been worked and targeted by the 3-letter agencies that they claim to hate, right? Because Q was obviously, at this point, if you don't understand that Q was intelligence level operation that was there to weaponize and turn the right-wing extremists against themselves, against the so-called Patriot movement, then why are you even here? Like, you can't even be a truther if you can't see what I'm saying. You have to be able to see the level of deception. And that's the easiest one. Like, the way the Q movement was used wasn't an accident. It was weaponized against the truth community. All of us have suffered because of your stupidity. And you're being worked. And we all get fooled. It's not a matter of, the issue isn't whether you get fooled or not. It's whether you can admit you got duped or you were wrong. There's so much disinformation there because the QBs invested so much of their life and their whatever into this that, that they can't do it. They can't come out and be, it's embarrassing. They've embarrassed themselves, right? In every level. You've been embarrassed. You've been, duped on such a level by the agencies that you claim to hate. And this guy worked for those agencies. You're duped again. He's still an operative. He's still a part of it because this is being used against you right now. And this guy, the left once loved this American hero. They used to love this guy, the left, but now they don't. The left. This is a left, and they're making it into a left and right, more divisive, and just it's bad. And this movie isn't a positive. It's not going to help. It's not going to help kids. It's not going to help fight against human trafficking. It's not going to do one thing but make it harder for you to talk about it on the internet, because that's what they've been doing here. They've been associating. Let's get into it here, what this guy says here.
Why is the media hating this movie?
I can't understand it. The film was...
See, this is just a false narrative. Because if you go to search the lamestream media, the left media, they don't care about this movie. There's not a lot of stuff about it, right? Like, these guys are making it sound like it's a banned movie and like the left is out to get it. It makes it that much more, tempting to the right-wing truthers. But it's not. They don't care about it. They're not, there's some things they've said, and everything they've said, these guys have quoted. So when you say something and the opposition is using it against you, it's something they wanted you to say. I'm going to get into some RFK stuff that he said something and the media's jumping on him about the COVID, the origin of COVID and it being genetically targeted towards certain groups. And now the mainstream media is jumping on that. Like, if you give them something that they want to jump on, then it's something that they wanted you to say, right? Fox News and this guy wanted the left-leaning media to be against this movie because it's going to make it, that much more appealing to right-wing people. It's going to earn that much more money. But it's not going to do anything to help those kids. That's not how you'd help those kids. That's not, it's the opposite, right? So this guy here,
was made, produced, written like 5 years, 6 years ago, way before anyone heard the name QAnon. I still don't even know what QAnon is. In the meantime,
You don't know what it is? You don't know what it is. You work for the NSA, and you don't know what Q is? You don't know what it is? That's a lie. That's what Trump said. I don't even know what it is. I don't even know. Why would I know? I'm in the intelligence community, and QAnon's been targeted and worked on. Why would I know? What is it? Like, what is it? Someone explain this thing to me. I can't understand. It's so hard to understand what QAnon is, and the people that were just. He's a liar. He's a liar. He's not a hero. He still works for the intelligence community. He's working you, right? This movie, you got this is what's worse than I even thought. Like him saying that, that's what Trump said, right? Remember when Trump said the exact same thing, and then Trump now is running on the Q platform talking about the deep state.
During the pandemic, the QAnon movement appears to be gaining a lot of followers. Can you talk about what you think about that and what you have to say to people who are following this movement right now?
Well, I don't know much about the movement other than I understand they like me very much, which I appreciate.
He doesn't.
Appreciate.
He appreciates anybody liking him. Now, this is when Q was at its height, the movement. So this is during COVID, right before the election. They thought they were going to see Donald Trump Jr. come in for second term and wipe out the deep state, and they were very prevalent on the streets. The media was talking about him all the time, using him as a weapon against Trump and the right-wing people, and especially the truth community. The media was going full, we're going to use QAnon and talk about truthers, and we're going to push for censorship. That's what was happening then, right? During this whole thing, leading up to the big event that happened on January in 2021 with the, you know what I'm talking about. It was leading up. They're building a narrative for this thing. It's full out. This psychological operation that the NSA and intelligence communities are running on the American people to grab more of your stuff and talk about how crazy and extremist this group is, these Trump-supporting people. And they were supporting Trump, and it was all over the place. There was politicians, Marjorie Taylor Greene and these other politicians that were running for office that were a part of this movement. And so everybody knew about it. Everyone but the president and this guy, this hero.
I don't know much about the movement. I have heard that it is gaining in popularity, and from what I've heard, these are people that when they watch the streets of Portland, when they watch what happened in New York City in just the last 6 or 7 months, but this was starting even 4 years ago when I came here, almost 4 years, can you believe it? These are people that don't like seeing what's going on in places like Portland and places like Chicago and New York and other cities and states. And I've heard these are people that love our country and they just don't like seeing it. So I don't know really anything about it other than they do supposedly like me.
That's all that matters. That's what I said. Hey, stop it right there. If they like me, I like them.
And they also would like to see problems in these areas, like especially the areas that we're talking about, go away, because there's no reason the Democrats can't run a city. And if they can't, we will send in all of the federal, whether it's troops or law enforcement, whatever they'd like. We'll send them in. We'll straighten out their problem in 24 hours or less. Okay?
Well, just real quick, at the crux of the theory is this belief that you are secretly saving the world from this satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals. Does that sound like something you
Kaboom, right? Like, this is how the narrative was playing out.
are behind? Or
Well, I haven't heard that, but is that supposed to be a bad thing or a good thing? I mean, if I can help save the world from problems, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put myself out there. And we are, actually. We're saving the world from a radical left.
Okay, so this is where this narrative has been, we know that from Kennedy that the Democratic Party because he was involved. This is, RFK Jr. in his interviews. Their position was anything Trump was connected to or for, we're against. Trump was divisive in this way. The Democrats are divisive, using Trump to divide the powers that be. He's a tool of division. And this narrative was shaping up that these crazy people were saying that there's all these elite pedos, and it hurt the movement, which I've explained in detail in my videos, recent videos on both channels. If you don't understand it, then, my God. Like I explained it, so like a monkey can understand what it's not rocket science, right? The way that they've, if you can't understand it, I don't know what to do for you. Like I can't just keep on telling you, explain it when you just are, in complete denial of what's happened here. But let's go back to this other guy.
I still don't even know what QAnon is. In the meantime, they're trying to connect it to some conspiracy when, in fact, like you said, this is a true story. These are real kids. I mean, these kids are my friends. They're young adults now, the ones.
There's just something about this guy, this personality, and I'll get into that. I want to switch over to an audio voiceover, so I have to edit this thing. But there's one part is something he's going to say here. So he hammers the media for a while. I can't show you all of it because Fox News sucks about this kind of thing. But he says this.
Shine a light on all of the things, all the atrocities happening to children, and so they have to discredit it by lying about it.
See, this is the thing. If this guy was really, and this guy who made the movie, and this guy were really against this, they'd find a way to bring the left in. The way they made the movie wouldn't be, draped in the flag. It wouldn't be targeted towards Republicans. It wouldn't embrace anything that would be, like this guy, they'd be aware of QAnon. They're using the less, everybody knows how this is done. I know it. You know it. Alex Jones knows it. That when you have something that you say is censored, that the social media and the government and Biden and everybody doesn't want you to see, that makes people want to watch it in the truth community, especially with these QAnon dopes, but all across the board. When you say that you have something, hey, this is a movie the government doesn't want you to see, that's a big selling point. And this movie is the number one movie. It's not an underdog. This movie beat Indiana Jones. So that guy was saying they spent $350 million on that movie. They probably spent $20 million on Indiana Jones. They spent $350 million. And on this movie, they spent probably 20. Look up the budget. It's $14.5 million. So it's even less than I thought. It's already grossed $85 million. This is a hit. This is a huge success. It's a financial boon. And they'll be making sequels and whatever else, right? They're getting free publicity, right? This is being promoted. They want everything that the left-leaning media says, they're quoting and they're pointing out and they're using to say, hey, look, you guys got to watch this. They don't want you to watch this. You've got to watch this. Listen to this question. This is a question that children are watching. This is like if you're watching Fox News and you're thinking this is a real question and don't realize they're pandering to you, not pandering, they're condescending down to your level of comprehension like you're a child.
So what would their motivation be to discredit a movie that's trying to shine a spotlight onto atrocities committed against children?
That's what I want to know. That's what I want. Like, wow, why would they do that? I don't understand why. Why would they do that? I don't understand why they would do that. Why would they do that? Why would they? It's just a no-brainer. I can't even stand and understand how crazy they are that they would do something like, don't they do that? Why would they do that? Like that's, you're a child if you're watching Fox News and you take this condescending question seriously. Why would they do that?
I hunt pedophiles. I've been hunting them for 20 years, and they are watching this, and they're salivating. They are happy that Rolling Stones and The Guardian are ripping on a movie that...
Okay, so this is the big line. Tim Ballard, pedophiles are salivating at media outlets ripping Sound of Freedom. All right, so I want to get to this other stuff. So this is, this is going to be a long video today. And I'm going to skip the Fran Drescher. I'm going to go right to the JFK. I keep on putting the Fran Drescher stuff off. It's kind of funny. I'll cover that. I got stuff with her and Mika. I just covered the one RFK thing, and then But anyways, I've said this before, and this has been well documented by so many of you who have nightmare experiences with QAnon, qbies. The qbies destroyed any sort of positive outcome of the truth community for a national type of waking up. And it was already, the sheeple weren't going to wake up anyway. But, any sense of the mainstream people being concerned about the truth community was handled with the qbies. It put to rest the truth community. Any sort of, I now want to say community, but movement. The community is still there, but the movement has been divided ever since and ruined. And I said this in earlier videos, lately and way before, when it was happening, that I am, an expert in the field of, I worked as a counselor, and then in my personal life, I was married to somebody who claimed to have been, abused in this way by her dad and mom. So I, lived it, my personal life, and I experienced it as a counselor, as a professional, working with teenage sex offenders. And I wrote a book about transforming abuse, in yourself, whatever, the abusive tendencies that are there in the, in any sort of framework permeate our society. Our society is abusive across the board. And I documented why or how that these, the assault cycle that I worked with is prevalent throughout society. And you guys who are, have been watching my videos for some time now, so many of you appreciated the work that I did explaining this, right? And I don't talk about it anymore because qbies wrecked it. They made it, difficult for these videos to be, to talk about this subject without the videos, going against the community guideline strike or even be monetized. Like, that's the more important thing, in terms of, they've made it so YouTube has based in the qbies that they don't want you talking about stuff that's graphic in this nature. And so that all happened because of the qbies. And you can say, well, the qbies aren't the ones who are making these policies, but the people who are running these platforms and who are handling these platforms, they're not good people. They're not people who, they have an agenda. They have an agenda of censorship. And so you can't expect or blame them for doing what they're going to do. It's like you're blaming, there's a parable or story that was told in the Sajmark system, like a fable. There's a couple different versions of it. There's one that involves a snake and whatever. And a person, nurses a snake back to health. And the snake bites the person. But there's another one where a scorpion asks a frog to carry it across a stream. And they both have the same ending. I've heard these different versions. And the frog, the scorpion gets on the frog's back. And, the scorpion says, oh, if you do this for me, I'll be so grateful. And, he said, I won't try to hurt you or anything like this. And as soon as the frog gets over the other side where the scorpion can crawl back, the scorpion stings the frog. And the frog starts to die. And the frog goes, why'd you do that? Like, you asked me for help. And you said you'd be grateful. And, then I bring you over here and you kill me, right? And the scorpion says, because I'm a scorpion. In the other version, the snake says, because I'm a snake, right? But it's the same thing, same basic principle. It's their nature. And to Donald J. Trump, who wouldn't embrace the qbies, and this guy, Tim Ballard, who worked for the NSA, right, worked for the Department of Homeland Security, and there's no bigger threat now than the qbies, and the Q movement has been all over this, and he doesn't even understand what QAnon is. Come on, like you're a liar, But for all of those people, if they're truly against this human trafficking pedo thing, then they would know how this movie, like when they were making this movie, they knew that the left-wing media was going to target it because you heard the question that person asked Trump in 2020. And they knew it all along, that this is the way that they would tie this movie to QAnon. It's so obviously connected. And I get people all the time saying, this movie doesn't have anything to do with QAnon. I watched the movie. Yeah, of course it does. You know, who do you think the major audience is here? It's QBs, right? The people watching this movie are QBs and QB-friendly people, QB-adjacent people. That's the one group that this is targeted at. There's no Democrats watching this. Democrats aren't even thinking about this, liberals and independents. And, you know, this is white QAnon people for the most part. White Republicans, the majority of them voted for Trump, like 90-some% of them voted for Trump. I mean, you know it. Like, you know, this is who, you know, when you make a movie, you have to have an audience, right? You have to understand what the audience is. And they understood who their audience was, and it was QBs. There's no doubt. This guy's claiming he doesn't know who they are. You don't know who they are? Come on, you liar. You know, it's just ridiculous, right? And because of the QBs, they have made human trafficking, talking about it, a conspiracy theory and crazy, and you're just making it up. So that's what makes the pedos salivate, because now they've made it difficult for anybody to talk about it seriously on the internet without it being, oh, wow, you're just one of those QAnon people. You know, that's what you guys have done. The thing that you're against, you have made it crazy. You've made it like anybody talking about it is linked to your craziness. And this movie is divisive, and it's bad. It's bad for the movement. It's bad for the truth community. It's bad for anybody who's against human trafficking. It's not going to do anything to help it. It's just going to rile up a bunch of people who are going to be more, they're going to be more angry at the liberals and the Democrats. And they're already, again, preaching to the choir. You're not winning new people over. This movie's targeted at your group, right-wing Republicans, and, QBs specifically. So just to wrap this up, there was two people, Isaac Cappy, and then there's another guy out there in Arizona when they found this a homeless place. Like it was just a place homeless people would go and stay. A homeless camp. And they called it a pedo camp, and it was an R tree. There was a strap that you'd hold to keep your backpack off the ground. And it was obvious just a camping site for homeless people. But this guy who was desperate, he had climbed up a pole because he was, in the middle of town as a protest, and made a big deal about it because he was supporting the veterans who he was ever in the military himself. And when this guy talked, and Isaac Cappy talked, and this guy Tim Ballard, they all remind me of each other. They desperately want to be a hero. They're getting something from this. Isaac Cappy did damage by just saying things like Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg are pedos without giving any evidence or anything like that. And, he developed a following, and, he was holding court, and he loved it. And he loved talking about these things, being an insider, a minor actor. And his favorite role, he played a pedo in this creepy, low-budget movie. He talked about it being his favorite role. It's a weird role, bad movie. And he was just desperate. And this other guy was even more desperate. This guy in Arizona, he was crazy. And Tim Ballard is like a, more professional, polished version of this, who loves it. He loves every minute of this, and then talking about the left. And if he was truly against this, he would find a way to bring them in. He would make a movie that everybody could see. They would have made this movie that, would have been for all audiences. They would have made a great movie, not just targeting a group of, right-wing crazy conspiracy theorists that would, then they'd use the so-called backlash from the mainstream media to push this film and make this even a more divisive issue, and make it so that only your group, your desperate group, there's so much desperation in QAnon. They're desperate to stop all this pedo stuff, but they just keep on doing things to make it more acceptable, to make it more, difficult to talk about, to get it to be more censored on the internet. Your actions are hurting your cause because you've made it into an issue that every other group but you, and even people in the truth community, can't even talk about this and don't want to, because you've wrecked it. You've wrecked this thing. You've wrecked any chance of stopping it. And this movie's hurting the cause that you claim to care about, but you just want to blame the left and blame everybody else and take no responsibility for your one-sided approach to everything. And it's become a hostile, desperate approach where everyone else sucks but you. And I saw it in my comments. I covered some of the comments on my other channel, my last video. They just accusing people of being complicit or being a part of it because they call out you're being duped by, your stupidity. And so many people in the truth community are against this movie because we see it. It's so easy to see through. But you remedial, non-taking responsibility MNFers for your failure and not facing the truth about yourself and your group is hurt all of us. And we're over you. It's just, you suck. And if you don't understand how bad you suck and what it's like to, whatever that Bob Dylan line is, I wish you could be me for a moment so you would realize what it is a drag to see you coming. That's how we feel about you. People, who are doing this truth community stuff for years before you qbies even woke up, in your little minor way. You've been a complete drag on us who are, whatever this movement could have been, you killed it. They wanted to kill it, but you helped them, right? All right, let's move on to the RFK stuff.
Dear Great Pumpkin, I'm looking forward to your arrival on Halloween night.
So first he takes a hit off the hopium pipe.
Pumpkin patch, and you'll see the Great Pumpkin with your own eyes.
And then he tries to get his bitch hooked on hopium.
Sitting in a pumpkin patch with a blockhead. You owe me restitution!
Then his bitch realizes she's in love with a hopium addict and she wants her Skittles. She's been cheated out of her Skittles. And now his sister, who sees that her hopium addict's brother is strung out on hopium, has to go and retrieve him from the pumpkin patch.
I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, too. Stupid? What do you mean, stupid?
You sat in a pumpkin patch all night long waiting for a pumpkin man to rescue you. It's high on hopium, and he never came. That's what we mean by stupid.
Just wait till next year, Charlie Brown. You'll see. Next year at this same time, I'll find a pumpkin patch that is real sincere.
But after all the evidence has been presented that the Great Pumpkin, doesn't exist, is not going to save you, still in denial, lashing out, angry, waiting for the next hit off the hopium pipe. Okay, so I had one little more thought on this. I just ate breakfast. I was talking about this with my wife. And this is probably the biggest point. And I want something I hope I said earlier, but if I did, it's worth repeating. So everybody should be against child trafficking, right? 99% of the people, even pedos, are going to say, at least in public, that are against it, right? Like I said in my other video yesterday on my other channel. And so it's a pretty one-sided issue. The society and everybody in it should be against slavery, human trafficking, especially people on the left who are, so human rights and so all these things, right? And you've made this issue divisive, the qbies. You've politicized. You've made this something they could dismiss, right? We know their game now. We know what they're going to do. And dismiss is the important word. They can dismiss these things now as crazy conspiracy theories. And anytime you act in a way, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene running her idiot mouth out there. I'll show her again coming up. You got these right-wing dopes out there going out there and blasting Democrats instead of bringing them, like I said, I don't know when, in one of these videos, if you really wanted to accomplish this, you would find a way to bring the left in. And it shouldn't be hard because it's, human trafficking, right? It's abusive. They're all Me Too. They're all anti-abuse. They're all this stuff. And you could find ways to do it, right? But instead, you've made this into an us against them type situation instead of focusing on your goal And this movie doesn't focus on the goal because I, see the way they're marketing it. They're focusing on division. They're focusing on, the left doesn't want you to see this movie and they don't want to have this discussion. That's what Tim Ballard says over and over again. They just don't want to have this discussion. No, you have created a situation where it's polarized. So if you had more people, if you had 80%, 60% of the population that were pushing for reform, the government couldn't deny it. You have to bring people together. You have to unify. And you need to, this is your passion, then find a way to effing do it, right? It's the same thing with the right to life movement, the pro-life movement. The pro-choice movement and the pro-life movement are both movements of hatred against the other side, instead of trying to win the other side over. And as pro-life people, you're so desperate to save these unborn babies from being murdered, and that's what abortion is, then don't alienate some other side, right? Instead of the way the pro-life movement has worked and all the money they've put into this, into the politics, into the Republican Party, into these now Supreme Court justices, into changing the law. Instead of changing the law, you should have stopped the murder of babies. You should have put your resource into doing that. And the way you do that is you become pro women who are pregnant and, don't have a support system. You become their support system. You become pro, birth control or whatever it is. You put your money into those things, right? But the number one thing is you support these women who are pregnant. You make these centers up for these women to go to, where they'll be supported, where they can give up the babies for adoption. You have, adoption services that you create out of this situation, or you find ways to support these women. Instead of dumping your money into the Republican Party, which sucks, you put this money directly into these women who are desperate. You become their families. You become their support system. You go out and you meet these women. You take them into your Christian homes and you help them, get started and make something of their lives. So you help them, get a job or get educated or find a man or whatever they need to do. You pull them in, right? You bring them into your Christian community. You make them a part of it. And you save babies' lives that way. You'd save so many babies' lives by helping desperate pregnant women. But instead, you support the Republican Party that's against welfare, that's against food stamps, that's against supporting these, people in difficult circumstances. You'd have to go into the African American community, which, the right wing has never done, in any positive way, and help because women of color are 5 times more likely to get an abortion. So you go help them, right? You go be compassionate. You don't worry about the pro-Jews movement. You don't worry about the Roe v. Wade law, because changing the law isn't going to stop it, especially in liberal states. But, there'll be illegal abortions. You help women who need help. And you help, single moms, and so that they can raise their children, so they don't become, a part of the system and criminals, that they can, people who are in desperate poverty, single moms who raise kids like that, the kids end up being part of the system because the moms can't, do everything that needs to be done, right? Instead of making these democratic, liberal parents and, liberal, they have their kids too, make it into some, all this Disney stuff satanic and all these things, which it is, the stuff that's out there. That's too polarizing for them to hear. So you present your information in a palatable way, all the sexualization, all the porn on the internet, all these things. Not in a left versus right type situation, but you find out a way that the left can, it's so easy to appeal to people. Like, you see how easy you guys got duped by this movie. You see how easy the left is getting duped all the time. The stuff the left is falling for, they're voting for Joe Biden. You can't find a way to package your goals and your movement in a way that the left would like. It's saving babies' lives and saving children from human trafficking. You can't find a way to frame your narrative that the left would find appealing. It's so easy. Marketing to a demographic like that. You guys are getting worked all the time. They're getting worked all the time. You guys got worked by Trump. They're getting worked by the Biden Hollywood agenda, all this stuff. You can't find a way to make it, so that the left will buy into anti-pedo, killing baby stuff or whatever, but by doing things that appeal to them, that appeal to their belief system, instead of warring with their belief system, use their belief system to sell your goals. And you would reduce the amount of abortions, you would reduce the amount of unwanted pregnancies, you would reduce all this child trafficking stuff, because you would have majority support. But instead you hate them so much, you want to go to war, and you want to blame them. That becomes your goal, to destroy them, not to save the babies, not to save the kids, to destroy the left. If you can't see that, you suck, right? You're not, it's easy for anybody to see. You just don't want to see it. You don't want to see that the right wing, has these different, pro-military industrial complex, anti-supportive people, whether it be child support, whether it be welfare, whether it be any of these things, right? Which are, again, they're, you don't like them until you need them, until you get fired, until these things. And again, I'm not saying these things are good things. They're part of a dysfunctional economic system. There is unemployment built into our economic system. There is going to be so many people who are unemployed. There's going to be so many people who are in poverty. You can't get rid of that in this economic system. There can't be 100%. If there's wealthy people, there's got to be poor people. It's just the way it works. Wealth is determined by what other people have. If everybody's wealthy, then nobody's wealthy, right? So wealthy means that you have a lot more than other people, so there has to be poor people. And we have a wealth-based system that the Republicans are more in favor, and the Republicans have always been the party of money. And the unfair, the unequal distribution of wealth has caused all the problems and divisions that we've talked about. And you don't want communism, which, sucks in its own way. But the capitalism system is always going to leave these things that you are now focused on. You're now seeing a problem that you've ignored for years because you're being targeted with this problem. The powers have turned. These disenfranchised groups now are getting privileges that you used to have, and all these things. And so if you want to win them back and come together and fight the real enemy, then, the people are just the enemy within yourself, and the devil within yourself, and the devilish tendencies. Then you have to confront all your BS too, and stop, blaming, saying they're evil and we're good, because that's, all right, great. Then you're going to end up with all the problems that you see. And so if you're really passionate about this, you want to save babies' lives, you want to save, these human trafficking kids' lives, then you find a way to make this, sell this to the stupid left that'll buy into ridiculous things that they're buying into. You find a way to make this woke. It's so easy to appeal to it. People said to me when I started criticizing this movie, you're saying the same thing the media is saying, and it's because it's so obvious. Like, the movie is so obviously targeting you. It's so obviously targeting the QBs. And for this clown to say, I don't know who the QAnon is. I don't know who the QAnon. I don't even know. I just work for the agency that created it. Well, what is it? I don't even know. It's your number one targeted audience. You targeted these people. You made this movie to appeal to them. And you say you don't know who they are. And so, it's so obvious. And if you can't see that, how bad you've gotten worked, and how it's playing on your emotional strings and all these things, and how it's becoming divisive and it's hurting the very issue, human trafficking, that you claim to be against, then, what are you doing here? Go back to Fox News and go back to, whatever, Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Q movement, and just disappear from the whole, we're not alike. We're not, this isn't for you. Like, my videos, and people who are sincere about truth or whatever it is, we're willing to confront their own issues and their own, the whole bigger problem here, and not being us against them, left versus right, all these things. You just don't belong here. Start wrecking our thing. We built something here, and you guys came in and wrecked it with your stupidity. And you should be listening instead of talking. You should be learning instead of trying to teach, because you're not there yet. Like, you're little toddlers on this field, and you're embarrassing, and you're a pain to deal with. You're not hurting them. You're hurting us. You're hurting real people, like real sincere people that are hoping to make a change here. Okay, so I got to move on here. Okay, so before we get into RFK here, this is getting into it. This is the beginning of it. Blundering Biden 80 trips again, boarding Air Force One, using shortest staircase, get this man an elevator. So this is Microsoft. You know, this is used to be part of MSNBC. That sound was my dog scratching under his ear with a his collar was making that sound. He's taking an embarrassing tumble. They're posting something from Radar Online, which is the Inquirer. And they're, you know, this is mainstream media starting to cover Biden, and they're pointing out how old he is, right? Now, they didn't do this before. They're trying to get rid of this guy, right? They're bringing up something that's so obvious that the guy's been senile and he's too old to do the job. Now, they might have a candidate in mind, but if they do that, then that person's going to have to debate RFK. So Joe Biden can say he's the incumbent and I'm not debating anybody. But other than that, anybody else will. And when they do, they're going to look bad because that RFK is going to appeal to a wider demographic of people because he's just sincere. And he's good at doing this, and he's winning the social media battle right now substantially. And so this is the Democrats' problem here. And if you think, well, Joe Biden's leading by so much, well, they're going after this guy. The Hunter Biden thing now is being discussed, and it wasn't before. And he's going to have to run for president. Like, if he doesn't do it now, he's going to have to go up against Trump again or whoever it is. He's going to have to debate them. He's going to have to campaign. They can hide him in the primary, but they can't hide him in the general election. And he's not getting better. And so this isn't a big tumble. Like, you know, it's almost a nothing. He trips on the stairs. I don't know if it's here. Here it is right here. Here he goes, right? He's going up. And that's it. That's just a little trip, right? And he's just not an issue. A misstep. Not even worth talking about. You know, there's that other video where he literally falls down. He falls up the stairs twice. You know, that happened when he was running or was first president before. Just after he was elected. Media didn't cover it at all. But now they're covering it on all these liberal outlets. They're talking about it on Morning Joe. That is like they're his number one, you know, the fanboy club, right? And like he just, you know, he makes it up the stairs fine. This is not an event, right? Only that he's tripped recently, and they've made this staircase shorter for him, which is, you know, they're pointing out they're having to do things because he's, you know, so feeble he can't do it himself. But he's been senile since, I mean, we've known about it since 2019, but it started before then. He had all the signs of dementia. Why are they pointing it out now? They're going after this guy in ways they didn't go before. They're just, you know, disclosing things they didn't do before. At a time where, you know, he doesn't have a path towards victory right now. There's nothing that he's done politically, and the country's going in such a way that he's not going to win independent votes. And, you know, maybe they run Trump again, whatever it is. But RFK might, you know, run as independent. Who knows how that all play out, right? Because the Democratic Party's not giving him a fair shake. And so he's, you know, right now it's set up for him to lose. Kerry Kennedy rebukes brother RFK Jr. after he linked COVID-19 and Jewish people. So here's what she said here. I strongly condemn my brother's deplorable and untruthful remarks last week about COVID being engineered for ethnic targeting. His statements do not represent what I believe or what Robert F. Kennedy human rights stand for, with our 50-year track record of protecting rights and standing against racism and all forms of discrimination. So that happened. So now the liberal media is covering this. This is liberal NPR. Now NPR is supposed to be highbrow. It's supposed to be for people who are intellectual. You know, it's supposed to be free from corporate support. You know, this is national public radio. And it's what intellectuals and educated, you know, professorial people listen to. People who are into academia and critical thinking and debating and talking about issues in a real way, right? It's supposed to be covering truth to power. It was born out of the hippie movement that was, supposed to be talking about truth to power, things that the mainstream media wouldn't cover because of their corporate shill aspect to their existence, right? And so this is absolutely brutal.
Kennedy Jr. is challenging President Joe Biden for the 2024 Democratic presidential nomination. He is the latest member of a storied political dynasty to seek...
Just the way she talks, this ASMR kind of, the original ASMR public radio used to mock this on Saturday Night Live, right? PBS stuff.
Dynasty to seek the White House. He is also one of the most prominent voices in the anti-vaccine movement. For decades, that put Kennedy on the fringes of public discourse. During the height of the COVID pandemic, it got him banned from some social media sites, and that, Kennedy says, is motivating his presidential run.
This is what happens when you censor somebody for 18 years.
NPR's Shannon Bond has been following these early weeks of Kennedy's campaign. She's here now. Hey there.
Hey, Mary.
So here it is. RFK, the latest member of the Kennedy dynasty to run for president, regularly shares a dizzying range of falsehoods and conspiracy theories. So that's how they're framing this, without providing any context or evidence, which they won't in this thing here.
Hey, Mary Louise.
All right, what are we hearing from Kennedy on the campaign trail?
Well, he launched this campaign pledging to heal political divides in America and fight collusion. And he's been out there, giving tons of interviews. He's on podcasts, he's talking to magazines, TV networks. And these interviews are just full of conspiracy theories, misleading, and even outright false.
So there used to be lots of conspiracy theories in the hippie movement, right? All the conspiracies around JFK. I mean, this was, that came from the left first, some from the right. But from the left, right? More than anything, from the liberal hippie left. They had so many conspiracy theories. A lot of this stuff, the movement, started there with the Vietnam War, my brother coming back from Vietnam War, these anti-military industrial complex things, human rights issues, big corporates. The left used to be more, who embraced big corporations? The Republicans. And so the left was against all these things, right? Big corporations, big oil, military-industrial complex. And they had a range of conspiracy theories. And now the NPR is dissing conspiracy theorists, right? One of their chosen sons here, or the Democratic royalty here, this guy, and his lineage and his cousin or whatever it is that's dissing him on the MSNBC, all these things, right? We'll get into that in a moment. I'm showing you the PBS thing first, and then we'll get into the thing that he said about COVID.
Claims, and many of these are things he's been saying for years. So he has claimed that chemicals in the water supply could be turning children transgender. He claims Wi-Fi causes cancer.
Okay, so
and what he calls...
Let's start with that. We're talking about there's a thing on... Let me see if I can find it.
I'm Amy Goodman.
So this is Democracy Now!, which is very similar to NPR, right? Democracy Now! This says 1.5 million subscribers. This video got 300,000 views 9 years ago. And this was about Syngenta or atrazine, where this professor, this African-American professor with a ponytail, that works up in like Berkeley in California, was hired, by Syngenta. The university was hired by Syngenta to test their herbicide, an herbicide that has been banned in places all around Europe. Europe, it doesn't use this, right? And this guy found that it turned male frogs into female frogs and so many other things. It's used in like public parks where kids play. And this guy was threatened with lawsuits. He was physically stalked and fired from his job. And here's, he's in a lab doing scientific work. He talks about this stuff.
Males didn't breed properly, that some of the males actually completely turned into females. So we had genetic males that were laying eggs and reproducing as females. And
so this was liberal. This was all liberals, right? pro-environment liberals, liberal democracy now. Now, Alex Jones got a hold of this, and he did his Alex Jones thing, and it became something the left ended up ultimately mocking. This is what I was talking about before. When you demonize one group and, everything that person's for, you're against. That's what's happened here, right? Both sides suck, and that's why the country is being, done the way it's being done. And this is what you'd have to heal. I don't think it should be done or can be done. I'm black-pilled, right? According to you morons, right? But, this is what you would have to heal. You'd have to get rid of the division. Because this is a liberal meaning, this is a long 17-minute piece here. And he talks about all this stuff. He's a whistleblower scientist. He worked for, California, Berkeley, a prestigious, almost like an Ivy League, basically an Ivy League school in the West. And, his administration that got money from these companies didn't like his science. They were paying him to be a shill and to lie about this thing. And now NPR, let's go back a little bit here.
Conspiracy theories, misleading and even outright false claims. And many of these are things he's been saying for years. So he has claimed that chemicals in the water supply could be turning children transgender. He claims Wi-Fi causes cancer and what he calls leaky brain. He's even suggested that AIDS may not be caused by HIV. And he's repeated his long...
And so the Wi-Fi, it's microwaves. Like we know microwaves do. 4G's microwaves, 5G's even more powerful millimeter waves.
He did his longest running false claim that vaccines cause autism. And of course, Mary Louise, there's no credible evidence for any of this. But listening to him, it all adds up to this very conspiratorial worldview, this idea that they, whether it's the government, pharmaceutical companies, the media, are lying to you, but he's telling the truth.
I say this all the time. People conspire. That's why there's a word for it. People conspire. People lie, and they'll do horrible things. And I'll get into this more. Let's let this play out here.
When you say Kennedy has been embracing conspiracy theories for years, and we said he's been shunned for that by many circles for years, what is driving him to prominence today?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Those views really did sideline him from the mainstream for a long time. But then COVID happened, and the pandemic really gave an opening for Kennedy and other anti-vaccine activists to gain traction. Here's how Colina Koltai put it. She's a researcher who studies the anti-vax movement.
The global pandemic made vaccines and, disease like the conversation.
Okay, so let's, I don't want to, we know what this is about, right? But this is what this used to represent NPR and what various levels of the hippie movement represented, and all these people who believed Kennedy. How many liberal people and Democrats believe the CIA was responsible for RFK's death? And now it's just pretty much out there. Like everyone kind of knows it was done by, it was an inside job. It's like more than 60% of the people believe this. And so you're just going, you're a conspiracy theorist? Oh, my God, you're one of those? You're one of those? And, they suck for doing that. And the right-wing people, you suck for contributing to it, for making this us against them right-wing libtard thing, right? You guys have wrecked this. They wanted to wreck it, and you allowed them to do it. And the dopey left fell for it, sure. Just like the dopey right, you fell for your thing. You fell for division, where unity should have been the goal. So then the mainstream media went in on Kennedy because of what he said about, and I'll show you the clip, and then I'll do a short narrative, and I'll wrap this thing up.
Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is facing criticism for spreading false claims about COVID-19.
He repeated a conspiracy theory that the virus was, quote, ethnically targeted against certain groups while sparing Jewish and Chinese people.
So they have, I don't know if they show you the clip here, but it's just CBS News is just sucking here. I'm not going to show you the clip, but here it is. RFK Jr. says COVID may be ethnically targeted to spare Jews. I guess it's being allowed right now on the internet at the New York Post here.
I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past
2.5 years, and the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing.
Okay, so this is supposed to be anti-Asian and anti-Jewish people, because what he goes on to say is that the people who most suffered from COVID are white and black people, but certain type of Jewish people and Asian people, COVID wasn't nearly as harsh on them, right? So I switched over to my audition program, and somehow it taped me doing that, and it usually wouldn't do that because you can't use the microphone for two different things. And I was using it in ScreenFlow and Audition. But anyways, I let you see, get a gander into my world here. But then I realized I should check this out, and I did. So here's the information backing RFK's claim. Okay, so what he goes on to say here is there's an article here by some scientific journal. The color of coronavirus, COVID deaths by race and ethnicity in the United States. And so in the United States, based in percentage of the population, indigenous people got it the worst. White and black and Pacific Islanders all got it the same. Latino and Asians got it less. And so this is 1 out of every 202 indigenous people died by 495 per 100,000. Whites 1 out of 262, blacks 1 out of 265, Pacific Islanders 266, Latinos it's a big jump, and then Asians quite significantly lower. And so you see that there is a disproportionate, this is in America, in terms of the way that the coronavirus affected different racial demographics. It doesn't say anything about Jewish people specifically here. That's something that RFK said himself. Okay, so there's no data for the worldwide breakdown of this. We know Asian countries were hit less. And I don't have any scientific data other than that, right, where this is being published. I'm sure they have a worldwide statistic somewhere. And then my point isn't to prove or disprove this. It's to talk about how they're saying this is ridiculous. Because it's like 2.7, twice as many people of indigenous people were likely to die from this as opposed to an Asian person. So 2.7 people would die for every one Asian, right? It's almost 2 to 1 for blacks and whites and Hispanics compared to Asian people. And again, this virus was supposed to come from an Asian country, which, I doubt that narrative. I believe this was done intentionally, right? But what RFK Jr. was saying here in a different interview, I'm not sure which one, but he talked about how biological weapons are being produced that will target certain genomes, certain genetic traits based in racial and ethnic identities, which makes total sense. If you're going to make bioweapons, you would want to make sure that your group, the demographics that you have, would survive and be less likely to be affected, and your enemy would be targeted. And of course they can do that. Like, they do all kinds of genetic work. And so they can make these viruses very specific, and they would do that, right? Are you saying they wouldn't do that? Are you saying that countries that produce biological weapons wouldn't target them against their enemies? Like we've made weapons that could destroy the world. We've made atomic bombs. The United States dropped atomic bombs on a country, and we saw the devastation. It was melting people. Biological and weapons of mass destruction have been used before. They're being used now, these cluster bombs that, Jen Psaki was saying that, my wife just sent me a thing. I'm not going to cover it here, but she was saying that these bombs are war crimes. They're, weapons that should be banned. And now Biden's sending them to the Ukraine to use on the Russians, right? And so, we know these things are horrible. The poisons in the food, the destruction of the environment that the left so much agrees with. And we've seen the evil that's being done by corporations and military-industrial complex and the intelligence communities and these governments and people in general, killing each other, abusing kids, doing all these things, right? There's evil across every aspect of our society, which we're aware of. And so you're saying that people wouldn't, war-based people wouldn't come up with a weapon that would kill certain races and not others? Of course they would. They would do that, right? They've done that in so many different ways. A woman of color is 5 times more likely to get an abortion. These things are structured into our society, like they did Tuskegee, where they gave black people syphilis and didn't treat them, right? Just to experiment on them like lab rats. Like this exists. This level of evil exists in every aspect of our world. And so to like slam RFK's idea here when he says he has the data to prove it, and you don't present any data, just saying, oh my God, this is crazy and evil. And this is, the division that exists here. Because if a guy like RFK, I was going to show you the My Pillow guy, whose company's going bankrupt because he spoke out. If people who are successful and rich, even somebody like Trump, who's not a true truther, can be destroyed just from flirting with the truth, saying things that are anti, the system, then everybody's at risk, right? Everybody's fair game to them. If you go against their narrative, even if you're in the club, as much as the club as the Kennedys are, they'll target you and they'll call you a crazy conspiracy theorist and say you're the problem, even though, they're the ones doing evil. We've seen this all before. And for you right-wing people, what I said here, you guys won't accept because you just can't. I mean, most of you. And it's why, my channel will always be lagging in membership and things, because I say things that people can't deal with themselves, right? It's my duty to say these things because, it's supposed to be about truth. But if you're sincere about your causes of saving children and, all these things, and you find a way to tamp down your message and deliver it in such a way, I'm not going to get to Marjorie Taylor Stupid Green. I'll do that next time. But you'll see it in her message about RFK. You'll find a way to shut your mouths and, listen and focus on the goal and be successful rather than be emotional and be worked and be stupid. Like right now you're getting worked and played and you suck. Like you just suck for us, you suck for everybody. Other than your little isolated echo chamber where you guys pat each other on the back and talk about how evil everyone else is but you. And I'm talking about all the, the right-wing people who have come into the truth community and haven't confronted their own party and their own religion and their own belief system. And you've just been a plague on the truth community. And, and we're over you. We've had enough. Like, you just suck so bad, right? And we're not fucking the left. We're not the liberals. We're not we're people that have similar beliefs that you do. And we're over you. Like, we've all had bad experiences with you. And you just don't get it. You just keep on showing up and sucking and making things worse for us, and then carrying on like you're superior in some way, and you're like, you're dumbasses, right? You're like, they're not awoken in any way. You don't have an awoken consciousness. You're just, the far right wing that's been, given steroids of the internet and the truth movement, and you've hijacked something that you had nothing to do to create. And you're just a complete bummer for the rest of us. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pouring from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.